From the New York Post, Tim Walz, a coward and a traitor, retiring from the military before Iraq, says guardsman who replaced the VP pick. Tim Walz, the new VP candidate, apparently was saying that he had carried a weapon of war in war. But, well, according to numerous reports, he never actually served. He left, leaving his men behind. That's the criticism. In fact, in this story from MSN, they say VP pick Tim Walz accused of stolen valor by former military colleagues. He abandoned us. I got to tell you, it's going to be a wild election. The Democrats could have chosen Josh Shapiro. And you know why they didn't? Look at this one. CNN panel explodes as ex-Bush advisor claims Kamala Harris couldn't pick Josh Shapiro due to rampant anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party. I got to say, so Kamala Harris and Tim Walz do this rally in PA with Josh Shapiro opening it up, and he was fiery. He was great. He really was. I don't agree with him. I don't like the policies these Democrats want to enact, but the dude could speak. And they didn't pick him because he's Jewish. You know, you're not going to convince me for a second otherwise. Progressives wrote a letter being like, his position on Israel. Okay, fine. You can criticize Israel. I'm not saying that. But I think we all know the real reason. He tried to apologize for his pro-Israel views. It didn't matter. They're not going to pick the guy. Tim Walz, however, let me pull this one up because apparently Tim Walz is a ceasefire guy. I pulled this one up in the previous segment. Let's pull this up from the forward so we can talk about it and see what they have to say, because he's faced backlash over his Israel positions. There's another article saying that he was of the ceasefire notion. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying, you know, a lot of the pro-Israel groups that are out that have worked to oust Bowman and Cori Bush are going to be lining up against Kamala Harris and Walz. And that gives Trump a large advantage, for better or for worse. The New York Post reports, when Minnesota Governor Tim Walz chose to leave the military on the eve of his deployment to Iraq, Thomas Behrens went in his place. Quote, I needed to hit the ground running and take care of the troops and tell them we were going to war, Behrens said to the 500 soldiers under his command. For a guy in that position, the quit is cowardice. Wow. Behrens, a 63-year-old farmer in Brewster, Minnesota, called the Democratic vice presidential candidate a traitor for retiring from their Minnesota National Guard unit just before the deployment to Iraq in 2005. When your country calls, you are supposed to run to battle, not the other way. The retired command sergeant told the Post Tuesday. He ran away. It's sad. He had the opportunity to serve his country, and he said, screw you to the United States. That's not who I would pick to run for vice president. Yikes. Here's a picture of him. This is when Democratic Vice Presidential pick Tim Walz retired from the National Guard on the eve of his battalion's deployment to Iraq, 2005. Tom Behrens above took his place as command sergeant major overseeing 500 troops. They say Behrens above called Walz a coward, and here's a picture of him. You know what I like? What I don't like? The American people being lied to enter foreign wars we should not be involved in Iraq and Afghanistan. I never blame the troops. The chain of command, depending on the level and depending on their involvement, the generals, the politicians, I blame them. But the people on the ground who said to themselves, this country needs my help and I will give it. I have nothing but the utmost respect. It is but for these people that I get to be a wealthy internet whinger. It's kind of crazy. When I was younger, I never liked the idea that pro baseball players can make millions of dollars and firefighters can make tens of thousands. I'm like, baseball's great. It's entertaining. But firefighters every day go out there risking their lives. Not always due to fires, other things, ambulance assist. They are there to help and save the community. And the same is true for many police officers. Some cops are meter maids. I can respect that too. Not everyone's running, out to crimes. But I can't imagine having to deal with the dregs of society and you get paid so little. It's a tough job. So when I learned of Tulsi Gabbard, and she said, after 9/11, I thought my country needs me and I'm going to enlist. And so many others did. That, I'm just like, man, we are lucky, aren't we? I am lucky that I can play the guitar, skateboard, play Magic the Gathering, turn on a camera, and complain on the internet. And I don't have to see combat because you've got men and women in uniform, people like Tulsi Gabbard, and many others And even this, I will give Tim Walz credit for joining, for being in as long as he did. I do respect that. I don't respect him leaving right away. Tulsi Gabbard was the young person who said, I will run headfirst into this. My country needs me. Tim Walz was the guy who, with all due respect for actually having served in the National Guard, was the guy who said, yikes, I don't want to go there. I'm out. And that I don't respect. I still give him a net positive. You guys can be mad at me and argue no, and because of the criticism and all that stuff. I'm going to say on a scale of 1 to 10, people who don't serve, you get none. You get a 0. Okay. No disrespect. I'm just saying you don't get any sacrifice points for the most part. Maybe you get a little bit depending on what your job is and what you've done in civil service. So like firefighters and police officers get a few points. Me, I take 0 points. I've done conflict and crisis reporting. And there's something in that of like taking risks yourself to get news and reporting out, but I don't think that's worth it. Now, when you're a civil servant and you're saving lives, you earn points. When you join the military, you earn a lot of points. Tim Walz deserves that for having joined in any capacity. I do respect that. But Tulsi Gabbard and many others who served and actually stood their ground and said, I will do what I must for as long as I need to, I respect more than dropping out. They say Walz, 60, joined the National Guard after high school and served 24 years in the 1st Battalion. Again, I do respect that a lot. 125th Field Artillery, rise into the rank of Command Sergeant Major. He retired in 2005, months after a warning order that the battalion would be deployed to Iraq to run for Congress. He was elected to office in 2006. On May 16, 2005, Walz quit, betraying his country, leaving the 125th Field Artillery Battalion and its soldiers hanging without its senior non-commissioned officer as the battalion prepared for war. I wouldn't say he betrayed his country. I'm sorry. Look, with all due respect to Barons, who I respect substantially more than Walz. No, he just abandoned his men. I don't say serving in Congress, I can respect to a certain degree. I'm not a big fan of Congress. But leaving right when you knew your men needed you most and you were going to war, yeah, I find that a bit despicable. And I wouldn't call it stolen valor. We have this story from MSN. It's from Western Journal. It's a repost. They say Walz, who announced it, he served 24 years in the National Army. He reached the rank of Command Sergeant Major. The Newsweek account included praise from retired Army Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, who wrote on X that those who reach that rank know what they're doing. They uphold standards. They speak their minds to all ranks, private to generals. They're not afraid of getting bad news because they know how to fix things when they go wrong. Well, I don't know the details of his career, of Tim Walz's career wearing the cloth of the country. Just the fact that he volunteered to serve and wore the CSM rank tells me a lot about him. Yeah, so I agree. Stolen valor goes a little far. He served 24 years. I respect it. I do. I can't say that I've done anything near that serving my country. And so to all the men and women, no matter how long you did, 4 years, you were, private, you were a specialist, whatever, you deserve a substantial amount of respect for that. And I know, because I've lived on base housing a little bit, as I've have family who have served, that not everybody in the Army thinks of themselves as a hero doing great personal sacrifice. To a lot of people, it's just a job. They were trying to find a job. They couldn't find one. They enlisted. They got a job. They served 4 years. They left. Still, I respect it. In September 2022, when Walz was running for re-election as governor, independent Minnesota news outlet Alpha News quoted retired Command Sergeant Major Doug Julin saying Walz abandoned his soldiers in 2005. Julin, who retired from the Minnesota National Guard in 2012 with 35 years of service, described a backdoor deal that allowed Walz to skip his unit's deployment to Iraq. He said Walz insisted early in 2005 that he would be going on the deployment despite talk of running for Congress. Julin told Alpha News that Walz confirmed, I'm going forward with the deployment. Then out of nowhere in June, Tom Behrens is there as the new CSM. Julin said he was most upset with how it was handled because Walz didn't come to him as Brigade Command Sergeant Major, the position he held at the time. He went around my authority to get out of the position. I probably would have told him, no, you're going on the deployment. Man. As soon as the shots were fired in Iraq, he turned and ran the other way and hung up his hat and quit, said Tom Behrens, a retired Command Sergeant Major. You know what I will say? If it's going to come down to who I'm going to defer to, I'll defer to the guys who went. I do not support the U.S. involvement in Iraq or Afghanistan, but I don't blame the men and women in uniform who were falsely informed, we'll put it that way, by bad actors, I look at it this way. It is true that there is the banality of evil when it comes to individuals who are willing to follow orders and engage in bad behavior. If a police officer shuts down a woman's salon because he's told to, he knows he's shutting down an innocent person's salon. When cops in New York shut down churches, they know they're shutting down churches. They know what the First Amendment is. I don't think that applies to our service personnel who went to Iraq and Afghanistan. You expect war. You expect foreign conflict, and you expect the intelligence to be correct. So when we're told that Iraq had involvement, when we're told they have weapons of mass destruction, when we're told that there is a serious risk of terror attacks and we need to put an end to this because we were just attacked on 9/11, granted this is 2003, I understand why people genuinely think you're doing the right thing, which is substantially different from shutting down a church. But it's tough. And I can certainly respect arguments that it's difficult to navigate these areas. Well, Mike Cernovich chimed in. He says, Tim Walz dodged a deployment and then lied about his military rank. This is a big deal. Minnesota media was able to cover it up. It flew totally under the radar. It's out there now, and it's a real scumbag-ish. He went on to say, Josh Shapiro was objectively a superior VP choice in every way. Under DEI policies, he couldn't be hired. Too Jewish for Democrats. It's funny because it's true. I love this. Someone responded saying, now you're claiming that an old white guy is a DEI hire? You have lost the plot. Cue the Kathy Newman meme. No, that's not what he's saying. He's a socialist. He's not a DEI hire. He's DEI ideology. Kamala Harris was the diversity hire, and I don't know why they're offended to say it. They talk about wanting diversity hires all the time. Take a look at this from the Daily Mail. CNN panel explodes as ex-Bush advisor claims Kamala Harris couldn't pick Josh Shapiro due to rampant anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party. Contributor Scott Jennings, a former staffer to George W. Bush, appeared to anger his fellow panelists after speculating Shapiro's religion was the primary reason for Harris excluding from the ticket. You know, that and maybe his just ethnicity and last name. But the conversation quickly spiraled into offhand comments about abortion and school lunches. Jennings initially claimed that Harris bowed down to the radical left by opting for Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. He speculated that by choosing Shapiro, who was Jewish, would have angered the extreme left wing of the party. He ain't wrong. Jennings' remarks were quickly met with backlash from others on the panel, who bizarrely countered with the issue of January 6th and Walz's past support for free lunch meals for school children. Is this
Jamie, you have some great new reporting about the process, the vetting process that Tim Walz went through and the conversations that he had, including
I don't rightly care about their 10-minute, hemming and hawing. Maybe we can just jump to the middle and see if we can see what he has to say.
The person who was not Jewish and not as talented and not from Jewish, there was they've showed us who they are. Kamala Harris absolutely bowed down to the radical left in her party by not picking Shapiro, who is Jewish. There was a nasty campaign run against him. Everybody knows it. No one wants to admit it, but everybody knows it.
Mm-hmm.
And she wound up choosing the person who was not Jewish and not as talented and not from the state that she has to win. He did a nice job tonight. Everybody could see why he was the best choice, but she couldn't do it because the party is somewhat awash in anti-Semitism. And then for Walz, when he did what he did during...
He's right. She needs PA. The only explanation outside of their anti-Semitic that I could come up with is that they're actually losing in Minnesota and the polls are all lies. And so Minnesota is only light blue. The fear then with Ilhan Omar, for instance, being far left and angering Somali Muslims is that everybody's going to vote Trump because he seems the same rational choice. So Kamala says we should pick Shapiro to try and win PA, but we are so far behind, we could actually lose a lightly blue state. That may be. I got to say, I think the reality is Shapiro has pro-Israel statements. That's not anything anti-Semitic in my opinion. However, a lot of these people are deeply anti-Semitic. I genuinely think they don't like Jews.
During the riots, to me, it was him saying, I don't have the strength or the character to stand up to this anarchy. So in two big decision points for this ticket, they've showed us they will always bow down to the radical left. So I think if you want to talk about normal, to the normal people in this country, bowing down to the radical left is not normal. It shouldn't be normal, and it should be a flashing red light to the normies of America that this is not the ticket for you.
You know,
Wow.
One of the big issues in this election is a woman's right to choose. And guess what? Kamala Harris got it.
I don't think it devolved into chaos. I don't think that was fair. I think that segment actually was handled pretty well. I think he made his piece, and then they calmly respond with other issues. That's fine. But he's right. He's right. So I have not read this article from Forward. I do know that there's been a lot of conversations about Tim Walz being more of a leftist when it comes to the Israel-Gaza situation. Forward writes what Tim Walz VP pick means for American Jews in Israel. They say the decision to choose Walz is expected to bring back to the Democratic ticket hundreds of thousands of people who vote uncommitted in the primaries to express outrage at the Biden administration's support of Israel in the face of ongoing attacks in Gaza after October 7th. The choice also avoids potential controversy over the other leading contender, Josh Shapiro, an observant Jew whose positions on Israel and a two-state solution have resurfaced recently, along with the accusations that opposition to him is anti-Semitic. The announcement comes 2 weeks after Democratic Party leaders endorsed Harris as their standard bearer. Blah, blah, blah. We know. They go on to say that what are Walz's views? While compared to Harris, Shapiro, and Kelly, Walz has no direct Jewish connections. American Jews are expected to overwhelmingly vote for the Democratic nominee, as they have historically. Progressives who cast uncommitted in the Democratic primaries this spring indicated they would be happier if Walz was picked. They pointed to his remarks on CNN. 19% of Democratic electorate in the state's presidential primary participated in the protest vote. They're asking to be heard, and that's what they should be doing. This is interesting. It's very interesting. I genuinely think they feared losing Minnesota. No joke. No joke. Because of all of the people on the progressive left who were voting uncommitted over the support for Israel. Now, Somali Muslims in Minnesota may not like Ilhan Omar because she is pro-LGBT leftist. And this is true. She was heavily slammed for it. I wonder if many of them they're still going to be anti-Israel. They may just support Tim Walz because he is more critical of Israel. More importantly, they may have been thinking, we're doing well in Minnesota. We're probably going to win. We need Pennsylvania. But if we choose Josh Shapiro, we lose Minnesota. That could be a real consideration. It's just so sad, to be completely honest. Now, Charlie Kirk's got a tweet here. He says, flashback, Tim Walz virtue signals about atoning for his privilege as a white man. For Walz, his atonement included overt Jim Crow-style racial discrimination in healthcare. The Democrats have picked a very, very radical man to run for vice president. Take a listen.
We pat ourselves on the back sometimes that we acknowledge we have the worst racial disparities. I understand that the privilege I've been given as a white man and the privilege of sitting in the office of governor, that privilege had better be used to not just talk about the problem, but to solve the problem.
Oh, my friends, out here in Appalachia, you can't walk a stone's throw without bumping into a white man who wants to use his privilege, lamenting the color of his skin. He wants to help those who have been negatively impacted by cis heteronormative patriarchy. Yeah, not really. I can't imagine the Rust Belt is going to be like, you're right, Tim Walz. We white men need to use our privilege to help everyone else. I'm pretty sure the reason why Donald Trump chose J.D. Vance, hillbilly elegy, is that there's a lot of people who are white who are suffering. Did you know that the racial group with the highest amount of poverty is white people? Why? Because there's more white people. You got a lot of poor white people. I'll tell you, actually being in Appalachia, people are suffering. And you know what I'm not a fan of? I get it, man. Far be it from me to tell you can't have your hot spots out here in West Virginia, but it does break my heart that I drive down the road and what do I see? I see like 15 hot spots. A hot spot in West Virginia is it's a light bar for drinking. They usually have beer and slot machines. And that's it. And people go there and they buy a drink and they just hit the slot machine button. There's so many of these. Now, I can respect wanting to hang out with friends at a bar and a pub, and we have those too. But it does kind of freak me out that West Virginia has so many hotspots. Look, I got to tell you, it funds the state. I'm sure the state is happy with all the money being dumped into these machines. But people need money to invest in and expand West Virginia too. That's just West Virginia. Don't get me wrong. There's parts of Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Ohio. But West Virginia is basically Appalachia. That being said, these poor white folk who are looking for better lives, who have lost purpose in their lives, they're not going to come out and be like, white privilege. They're going to be like, I can't afford anything. They're going to say, my community is suffering from the fentanyl crisis. That's bad out here. And we're trying to solve these problems. They're going to say, we need internet. We need roads. They're not going to walk out and say, well, because I'm white, you should give the internet to somebody else. That is a ridiculous candidate to choose. Boy, oh boy. I got a couple other tweets. Tim Walz signed a bill redefining the term sexual orientation to include pedos. Oh, man, this one's too brutal. This was a big controversy. I remember when it happened. The original law said sexual orientation does not include a physical or sexual attachment to children by an adult, and they removed that. Why? That's weird. They want to say J.D. Vance is weird, but this is weird. Maybe weird's not the right answer. Maybe it's degenerate and obvious. We know exactly why they do these things and what it results in. But my friends, here we are. AI study reveals how Kamala Harris has overtaken Donald Trump in the battle for positive headlines. This was always the game, right? In this country, you and I are beset on both sides by individuals who are either intentionally lying to steal power, the people who are smart enough to manipulate, and the stupid people who believe the lies. Now, I don't blame the stupid people for being stupid. It's sad. But the smart people who know they're lying, now I blame them. And that's what I mean is, on the bell curve, the average American who's paying attention and understands what's going on and actually checks the news to figure out how they can make their lives better, have got stupid people voting against them and wealthy elites lying to the stupid people to whip everybody up and make it impossible for us to improve this country because they want to extract power as the Titanic sinks. And this is the game they're playing. U.S. news sentiment. Now that Joe Biden is out, everybody loves Kamala Harris. And that's the game they were always intending on playing. So we can expect to see only the nicest things written about Tim Walz. It's going to be up to independent media to call out their lies. I do want to stress this one bit, which we will bring up in the next segment. Here's the website for Kamala Harris. They have no policies. They have none. They represent nothing. They will do nothing. I mean, they'll probably burn down the country intentionally, but Harris Walz, no campaign policies, no stated goals. That's a cult, ladies and gentlemen. We'll wrap that segment up there. The next segment, of course, coming up at 4 p.m. We're going to talk about the market crashing and why this actually could signify a Donald Trump victory, regardless of what we think about left or right-wing politics. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show. We're doing this new morning live podcast. It's been going smashingly. I think we're getting around 1 million per episode, which is really, really great. We're averaging maybe like 300K on YouTube, and then with the podcast platforms and segments, we're probably cracking over 1 million. IRL does 3.5, so it's great to see that the morning show has been doing so well, and we've seen a great success. Smash the like button, follow me on X at Timcast, become a member at timcast.com, and we'll see you all in the next segment at 4 p.m.